If you asked the average person on the street why a young woman would ever be interested in a man 15, 20, even 30 years older than her, you'd get the same tired answer every single time. Money, security, a wallet with a pulse attached to it. That's the story we've all been told. That's the story movies sell, sitcoms joke about, and comment sections repeat over and over until it sounds like the truth. But here's the problem. It's not the truth. It's not even close to the truth. And if you're an older man who's bought into that story, you've been quietly sabotaging yourself for years without even knowing it. Because while you've been worrying about whether your bank account is impressive enough, whether your car is nice enough, whether you can keep up with some 25-year-old in a tank top at the gym, you've been completely ignoring the things that actually matter to her, the things she's been quietly searching for her entire dating life and almost never finding. So sit back, get comfortable, because for the next few minutes, you're going to learn what's actually happening in her head, what she's actually responding to, and why most older men miss it, even when it's standing right in front of them. By the end of this, you're going to see this whole dynamic differently. Maybe for the first time in your life. The myth that refuses to die. Let's get this out of the way first, because if we don't, nothing else is going to land properly. The myth is simple. Young women who date older men are after one thing and one thing only: the wallet. It's the easy explanation. It's the lazy explanation. It's the one that lets everyone off the hook because it means nobody has to think too hard about what's really going on. But ask yourself this: if it were really just about money, why are there so many wealthy young men who can't keep a girlfriend for longer than a weekend? Why are there millionaires in their late 20s paying for dating coaches? Because they cannot, for the life of them, figure out why women keep ghosting them after 3 dates. Money is not the answer. Money has never been the answer. Money is just the story people tell when they don't want to admit the real answer, because the real answer is uncomfortable. The real answer is that most younger men are missing something specific, and older men, the ones who've actually done the inner work, tend to have it in abundance. So, what is it? Let's break it down. The first thing she actually notices. Here's what she notices first, and it's going to surprise you. Stillness. Not confidence, not swagger, not the practiced lean against the bar with the half smirk you saw in some dating coach's video. Stillness. The quality of a man who is not performing, who is not auditioning, who is not trying to win her over in the first 90 seconds. Think about what most younger men do when an attractive woman walks into their orbit. They tense up. They start running calculations. They reach for their phone to look busy. They straighten their posture in this slightly artificial way. Their entire body language screams, "I am aware of you, and I am now performing a version of myself for your benefit." She feels it every single time, and it's exhausting for her. Now picture an older man who has lived through enough that a beautiful woman walking past his table simply does not rearrange his nervous system anymore. He keeps reading. He keeps drinking his coffee. He looks up, makes eye contact, gives a small nod, and goes back to whatever he was doing. No grasping, no reaching, no performance. That stillness is magnetic. And here's the part nobody talks about. It's magnetic because it's rare. In a world where everybody is constantly performing, constantly posting, constantly auditioning for the approval of strangers on the internet, a man who is genuinely, peacefully, comfortably himself is like finding a quiet room in the middle of a thunderstorm. She doesn't always have the words for it. She'll call it maturity. She'll call it having his life together. But what she's actually responding to is the absence of desperation. And you cannot fake the absence of desperation. You either have it or you don't. The conversation she's been starving for. Here's the second thing: And this one cuts even deeper. She is starving for a real conversation. Not banter, not flirty texting, not the kind of dialogue that feels like two people trading lines in a sitcom. A real conversation. The kind where someone actually listens to what she said, thinks about it for a second, and responds to the actual thing she said instead of waiting for their turn to talk. You have no idea how rare this has become. We're living in an era where most communication happens in fragments, emojis, voice notes, half sentences sent at 2 in the morning. Most men her own age have never had a single conversation in their lives that lasted more than 15 minutes without somebody checking a phone. They've never sat in silence with another human being and felt completely fine. They've never asked a follow-up question that wasn't a setup for their own story. And then she sits down across from a man who's lived a little, who's read some books, who's failed a few times and learned something from it, who can actually hold space for what she's saying without immediately needing to fix it, top it, or redirect it back to himself. Do you understand what that feels like to her? It feels like coming home. It feels like she's finally being seen, not the version of her that posts on social media, not the version of her that her friends see, the actual person underneath all of that, the one who has thoughts she's never said out loud because nobody ever asked the right question. That's what real conversation does. And it has very little to do with age, technically. But practically, in the real world, it tends to live in men who've had the time to develop it. Men who've been forced by life to slow down. Men who've learned that listening is not the same thing as waiting. The thing she won't say out loud. Now here's the part that's hardest to talk about. The part she will almost never say out loud, even to her closest friends. She wants to feel safe. And not just physically safe, although that matters too, emotionally safe. She wants to be in the presence of a man whose mood is not going to swing wildly based on whether she texted back fast enough. A man who isn't going to get jealous if she mentions a male coworker. A man who isn't going to sulk for 3 days because she said something that bruised his ego. Younger men are often emotional weather systems. They don't mean to be. They just haven't lived long enough yet to develop the internal stability that comes from having survived a few storms. Their feelings are big and loud and immediate, and they expect the people around them to constantly manage those feelings for them. A woman who has dated a few of these men knows exactly what this is like. She knows the exhaustion of walking on eggshells. She knows the feeling of being responsible for somebody else's emotional regulation. And when she finally meets a man who doesn't need that from her, who is internally stable, who can hear something difficult without falling apart, who can be told no without spiraling into a sulk, the relief is almost physical. She can finally exhale. And here's what nobody tells you. That exhale, that one single moment of being allowed to relax, is more attractive than any six-pack, any sports car, any clever pickup line ever invented. Because it's rare. Because it's real. Because it cannot be faked for very long without the cracks starting to show. What she is not looking for. Let me also tell you what she is absolutely not looking for. Because a lot of older men get this part catastrophically wrong. She is not looking for a father figure. Stop. I know somebody out there is rolling their eyes, but this phrase gets thrown around constantly to dismiss these relationships, and it's almost always wrong. She has a father. If she wanted another one, she'd call him. She is not looking for someone to lecture her. The minute you start explaining the world to her like she just landed on the planet, you have lost. She has lived a whole life. She has her own opinions, her own pain, her own hard-won wisdom. The fastest way to make her stop seeing you as attractive is to start treating her like a student in your personal seminar. She is not looking for someone who is trying to be young. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is less attractive than an older man cosplaying as a 25-year-old. The slang, the clothes that don't fit right, the forced references to whatever music he thinks is current. She can smell it from a mile away, and it doesn't read as youthful. It reads as insecure. It reads as a man who is ashamed of his own age. And if he's ashamed of his own age, why on earth would she be drawn to it? What she wants is the opposite. She wants a man who has fully accepted who he is. The wrinkles, the history, the scars, the opinions, the whole package. Because that acceptance is the foundation of everything else we've been talking about. The stillness, the real conversation, the emotional safety. None of it is possible if you're at war with your own reflection. The quality that changes everything. There's one more thing, and if you take nothing else away from this entire video, take this presence. Real, undivided, eyes on her, phone face down, nowhere else. I'd rather be presence. This is the thing that ties everything together. This is the secret ingredient, and it is so vanishingly rare in modern life that when a woman finally encounters it, she doesn't just notice it, she remembers it for years. Think about the last time someone gave you their complete attention. Not partial, not while glancing at a screen, complete. How did it feel? It probably felt like a small miracle, because it basically was one. We have built an entire civilization designed to fragment our attention into 1,000 tiny pieces, and we have collectively forgotten what it feels like to actually be with another person. A man who has lived long enough to understand that attention is the most valuable thing he owns, and who chooses to spend it on her fully and without distraction, is offering her something money literally cannot buy. Because the richest man in the world, if he's checking his phone every 2 minutes, is offering her nothing. This is the great secret. This is the thing the dating advice industry will never sell you because you can't package it, you can't shortcut it, and you can't fake it. You have to actually become the kind of person who can sit with another human being and be fully there. And the beautiful thing is, age has very little to do with the raw capacity for it. But statistically, the men who tend to embody this are the ones who've lived enough to know that nothing on their phone is more important than the person in front of them. What this actually means for you. So, if you're an older man watching this, wondering what any of this means for you, let me make it simple. Stop trying to compete on the things you can't win. You are not going to out-energy a 23-year-old. You are not going to out-Instagram him. You are not going to look better in a tank top than he does. That entire game is rigged against you, and the moment you step onto that field, you have already lost. Compete on the things only you can offer. The stillness, the real conversation, the emotional safety, the total presence. These are not consolation prizes for being older. These are the actual prizes. These are the things she's been searching for her entire dating life and almost never finding. And the moment you stop apologizing for your age and start understanding it as your single greatest asset, the entire dynamic flips. You stop chasing. You start being chosen. Not because you've tricked anyone, but because you finally become the man she's been hoping existed. The final thought. Picture this for a moment. A quiet table. A woman in her late 20s leaning forward, completely captivated. Across from her, a man in his early 50s. Nothing flashy, no designer clothes, no expensive watch catching the light. Just a calm, grounded presence and a pair of eyes that are actually looking at her. Really looking. Not scanning the room, not checking a screen. Just there. She isn't leaning in because of his money. She isn't leaning in because of his looks. She's leaning in because for the first time in who knows how long, she has found a man who is actually fully, completely there with her. That's the whole secret. That's the entire video in one image. So the question isn't whether she'll find you attractive. The question is whether you've done the work to become the kind of man who's worth finding in the first place. Think about that, and I'll see you in the next.